Today we're driving from San Diego, California to the Arizona border on Interstate 8, and we're going to be exploring some of the hidden history along the freeway. Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Across the street behind me is where Interstate 8 begins here in San Diego, California. The interstate travels from here to the junction of Interstate 10 just outside of Casa Grande, Arizona. The 8 is about 350 miles in length, with it being almost evenly split between the two states. We previously did a video on the hidden history on Interstate 8 in Arizona, and today, California gets its turn. So let's jump in the car, start heading towards Arizona, and explore some of the hidden history on Interstate 8 in California. Construction began on Interstate 8 in the 1960s, and the route was completed in 1975 through California, and by 1977 through Arizona. The freeway largely follows the same path that Highway 80 and Arizona State Route 84 covered before the creation of the United States interstate system. Today we're going to be focusing on the section of interstate located in California. There are a lot of things to see and do in this part of California, but I want to examine some of the hidden history on the side of the freeway. Things that might otherwise be missed when driving down the road. For the purposes of this video, we're going to include only things that are actually on or next to Interstate 8. So our first stop is only a few miles from where the freeway starts, but it's where California began. Now obviously this large building behind me isn't exactly hidden history, but it's something else that brought us here today. So let's go take a look at a long forgotten cemetery and the first American to be buried in California. A lot of people mistakenly believe this building is a Spanish mission, but it was built in 1929 and is currently the Serra Museum. This is, however, the site of the first Spanish mission in California until it was moved a few miles east of here. What we are looking for today is right next to what is known as the Witch's Tower. It's a grave marker for Sylvester Pattie, though he's probably not actually buried right here. Sylvester Pattie was born in Kentucky and later moved with his family to Missouri, where he built mills along the Big Piney River. When his wife died of tuberculosis in 1822, he decided life was too short and went adventuring with his son James. They traveled throughout what is now New Mexico and Arizona and eventually came to San Diego, where they were imprisoned by the Mexicans who ruled California at the time. Sylvester died in prison on May 24, 1828, becoming the first American buried in California. Despite his marker being here, I had mentioned that he's probably not actually buried right here. It's more likely that he's over here somewhere, because this was the site of San Diego's first cemetery. There were actually hundreds of people buried here, from the 1700s to the mid-1800s, but unfortunately, their grave markers have been lost to time. There isn't a lot to identify that there was a cemetery here, but kind of hidden away on the back of this sign is a register of some of the people that were buried here. This doesn't list everyone though. A lot of Native Americans are missing, and even Sylvester Pattie is not listed on here. But let's get back on the road and head to our next stop, which is pretty much right across the freeway from where we are now. San Diego's Mission Valley is filled with shopping malls, offices, hotels, and condos. But this was once all farmland. If you came through here prior to World War II, there would be far more cows than cars. The last farm in Mission Valley closed in the late 1970s, and now there is almost no evidence there were ever any farms here. Almost. This U-Haul office is set up in one of the last two remaining farmhouses in Mission Valley. I believe this farmhouse was built in the 1940s. There was until recently one last barn in Mission Valley as well that was being used to store equipment at a golf course, but it was torn down within the last year. For those wondering, the other remaining farmhouse in Mission Valley is surrounded by offices, but since that one is actually still occupied, I'm not including it in this video. There's a tall fence around it anyway, making it hard to see anything. Now we're at the ghost town of Buckman Springs. Here, there are a few ruins to explore, but the hidden history that I want to talk about today is the grave of Amos Buckman himself. A hidden grave that, when it was rediscovered, led to a change in the direction of the fencing along the freeway. Buckman Springs was a popular resort town until the 1940s, but now it's a ghost town with a few ruins to explore. The town's founder was a man named Amos Buckman, who was born in Vermont in 1821 and ended up in San Diego in the 1870s. In 1881, he was given a 160-acre homestead here, and Buckman Springs was born. Amos Buckman died in 1898, but he never left Buckman Springs. And now he can be found just a few hundred feet east of here, down the freeway. Buckman's grave was lost to time, but when they were building the fence along the freeway in 1979, they rediscovered it. Because of the grave, the fence takes a sharp turn to angle around it. After the grave was rediscovered, a new tombstone was added, but the grave is still pretty well hidden. And not only am I keeping an eye out for the tombstone right now, I am also keeping an eye out for rattlesnakes. It's pretty hot out right now, so hopefully they're all off staying cool somewhere. I think the whole story of the town of Buckman Springs is pretty interesting, and we actually did a video on it before, which I'll link in the description. But every time we come out here, the ruins get just a little bit more, well, I guess ruined, and I imagine it's not too long before it's just a pile of rocks, unfortunately. And you can see with the trucks going by just how close we're getting to the freeway here. But we're also getting pretty close to Mr. Buckman's grave, which should be just over here. And yep, there it is. The last resting place of Amos Buckman. If he would have been buried just 10 feet further south, his grave probably would have never been rediscovered. Right on the border of San Diego and Imperial counties is the Desert View Tower. This has been a popular roadside stop since the 1920s, originally built to help promote a restaurant. Just south of here though, you can see nearly 170 years of roads, all in one spot. As you travel down the Mountain Springs grade on Interstate 8, off to the side of the freeway, you can see the old stagecoach road that dates to 1856. Next to it is the slightly less steep 1870 stagecoach road. These roads were very important in linking San Diego to the east, shaving days off the original routes to the city. Also visible from the interstate is a paved road that dates back to 1913 that eventually became Highway 80, a highway that was known as the Broadway of America and would end up bringing more people into California than its more famous cousin, Route 66. We've come down the mountain and we're now in the desert. More specifically, the town of Ocotillo. This would have been an important stop on Highway 80, but it's been largely bypassed by the interstate, so now you can find a bunch of abandoned buildings here to explore. However, if you would have come here a few hundred years ago, this would actually have been lakefront property. But anyways, let's get back on the road and start heading towards our next piece of hidden history on the interstate. The Imperial Valley was the site of a prehistoric lake, Lake Cahuilla, with the Ocotillo town site being right on the edge of where the lake would have been. At its height, the lake covered over 2,200 square miles. Over the last few thousand years, the lake has appeared and disappeared at times, with it last being present probably in the 1500s. The location where the Salton Sea is was also once part of Lake Cahuilla, and had human intervention not stopped the flooding that created it, it's possible that the Salton Sea could have grown to the size of Lake Cahuilla as well. There's no signage on the freeway to note it, but when you cross the New River on Interstate 8, this is the lowest point above ground on the United States interstate highway system and 52 feet below sea level. I have to qualify it as above ground, as part of I-95 goes under Inner Harbor in Baltimore, Maryland, putting that freeway at 107 feet below sea level, because it's actually under the sea. After Los Angeles won the right to be the western terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad, San Diego leaders decided they would try to make the city the hub of Southern California's road network. The only problem was the sand dunes in the southeastern portion of the state. Their solution was a wooden plank road to be built across them. The plank road was built in 1915 in only 2 months. The total length of the road was 6.5 miles. For the next 11 years, work crews constantly struggled to maintain the road, fighting the elements. But from 1915 to 1926, the plank road was the only way to travel across the desert here between Yuma and San Diego. The road is fairly narrow, so they had to have turnouts every 1,000 feet so cars could pass each other. Most of the old plank road is gone now. This section here was recreated in the 1970s, using original fragments of the road that were found along its path. These ruins are listed as the Araz stage station, but its true identity is seemingly unknown. It's very unlikely, however, that it was ever a Butterfield stage stop, which most places online list it as. There was a Butterfield stage stop at Fort Yuma, which is too close for another stage stop to be needed here. This site is not listed on any stagecoach maps either. There is some belief that this was a pump plant for the American Girl mine, but no one truly knows. There is nothing here now to identify this place at all, but back in the 1940s, there was a sign here identifying this as a stage station, claiming it was built in 1856. So it seems this was believed to be a stage station for quite some time. Also, from looking at a picture from the 1940s, you can see just how much this place has deteriorated over the years. Whatever this place was, it has clearly been here for a long, long time. And while it would be interesting to know what this place was, sometimes a mystery is pretty fun too. We've arrived at the Colorado River, and as a matter of fact, we're in Arizona now, where according to my phone, it is 115 degrees. So it's quite toasty. But that's our look at the hidden history on Interstate 8 in California. Now, we did previously do a video on the hidden history on Interstate 8 in Arizona, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description if you want to check out what's further east from here. But I'm going to get back in the air conditioning and get out of this heat. So thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.